covering the world of professional wrestling. This is the Signature Spot with Chris Toplak.
3, 2, 1.
Thank you very much for tuning into the latest episode of the Signature Spot with Chris Toplak. As always, I greatly appreciate your ongoing support. And if you are tuning in for the very first time via the Lords of Pain YouTube channel, take off your shoes. Hope you stay a while. You can also listen every single Thursday on youtube.com/the Signature Spot. You can subscribe there. Also, Spotify. Look for the Signature Spot, gaining a lot of traction there. iHeartRadio, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spreaker, and podcast apps such as Overcast. Plus, you can be a part of the conversation. Join me on Twitter. Follow the Signature Spot Facebook fan page, at Chris Toplak on Twitter, at the Signature Spot on Instagram, and also thesignaturesspot.com. I am a week behind, but the latest episode of The Dark Side of the Ring, the last of the Von Erichs, was so undeniably gripping that I never wanted it to conclude. Kevin Von Erich was so forthright and honest that it was heartbreaking to witness, but his resilience and outlook is so incredibly admirable. He's truly a courageous survivor with a new lease on life. He's in Hawaii. He's happy. Good for him. As Jim Cornette so eloquently stated, the Von Erichs could have two legacies. One of the biggest attraction wrestling families in history, or that of a cautionary tale. Perhaps it's a bit of both. But they were true rock stars in the 80s, and WCCW was so far ahead of its time in so many different ways. This is a must-watch. I'm about to watch the episode on Gino Hernandez, and I cannot wait. So I went down a rabbit hole of obsessively watching WCCW matches over the past week on the WWE Network. And if I could choose any venue to witness a match, past or present, during the heyday, the Dallas Sportatorium would be near the very top of my list. It was a metal shed with no air conditioning, but it was magical. And as Michael P.S. Hayes once stated, it was Friday Night Church. On the program today, a rough edition of Monday Night Raw, and I'm joined by Ryan Boman as we discuss the very best of Money in the Bank.
Your weekly recap.
Monday Night Raw opened with Vince McMahon being confronted by Roman Reigns. Yes, Monday Night Raw is still apparently his yard. Daniel Bryan and Kofi Kingston later followed suit. To rub my eyes. Is this Tuesday? Do my eyes deceive me? Then Drew McIntyre came out on behalf of the Raw roster. Vince McMahon then set up two WrestleMania rematches, Daniel Bryan versus Kofi Kingston, along with Roman Reigns versus Drew McIntyre. Vince then implemented a very confusing wild card rule, which essentially allows members of each brand to sporadically show up on the other show. So essentially, the Superstar Shakeup was meaningless. The only rules? There are no rules. Then AJ Styles confronted Vince, while Seth Rollins confronted AJ. Any guesses on the next step? These two were put together, they have to put the differences aside, in a tag team match. Teddy Long put this together, right? Bobby Lashley and Baron Corbin took on the team of AJ Styles and Bobby Lashley. Yes, nearly 30 minutes into Raw, we finally got some in-ring action. And the conclusion saw AJ accidentally level Seth with the phenomenal forearm. The phenomenal one promptly left the ring, which allowed Corbin to take advantage and land End of Days on Rollins for the victory. Overall, it was a pretty fun match. Sami Zayn, this self-proclaimed critic of the critics, showed up. He continued to hold the fans accountable. Then Braun Strowman appeared and ran Sami into the back, and then he threw him into the trash. This was a theme they later revisited on SmackDown. They probably should have skipped it. Lucha House Party defeated a team of enhancement talent. When these matches are only sparingly introduced, they can be highly effective. I like it as a throwback to the 90s. Ricochet took on Robert Roode. They squared off with the one and only's Money in the Bank ladder match spot on the line. This all came together. Surprise, surprise, continuity was at play here as Roode defeated Ricochet 2 weeks ago, yet Robert was somehow completely left out of the match for reasons never quite explained. Fortunately, after a well-placed 630 splash, Ricochet maintained his spot. Backstage, Samoa Joe followed Ray's son Dominic backstage and he resented the fact that he tried to embarrass and humiliate him last week. He instructed Dominic to tell his father that he's looking forward to defending the United States Championship at Money in the Bank. Lacey Evans defeated her opponent, Ali, in less than 1 minute. The woman's right is what earned her the victory. Alexa Bliss, Naomi, Natalia, and Dana Brooke all watched at ringside. Evans then proceeded to note that they were there to see what a legitimate lady is truly capable of. Enter the man, Becky Lynch, a.k.a. Becky Two Belts, who ran down to the ring and eventually locked Evans in the disarm her, only for Lacey to narrowly escape. The Viking Raiders ran through the Raw Tag Team Champions in less than 3 minutes after hitting the Viking Experience. That's their pop-up power slam combo onto Zack Ryder. Much like the Revival's reign before them, it would appear as though WWE doesn't place much emphasis on Ryder and Hawkins or consider them to be legitimate threats. So they're treated more as an afterthought as opposed to those champions who hold gold. During Firefly Funhouse, Mercy the Buzzard destroyed Ramblin' Rabbit. Good night, Sweet Prince. Where is the 10-bell salute? Bray proceeded to forgive Mercy. A bunch of children were sitting around devoid of emotion, wearing sunglasses. Say what you will about Raw, but this segment has become a puzzle that we are all trying to collectively solve. Roman Reigns versus Drew McIntyre on Raw was far better than their underwhelming match at WrestleMania that just simply failed to connect. The chemistry wasn't there that night. The match ended in DQ after Shane McMahon attacked Roman Reigns. Elias joined in on the action too. The Miz eventually appeared and chased Shane throughout the audience and eventually backstage. Then a very unintentionally hilarious moment. Shane hid as The Miz sprinted by with the chair in hand. Out of nowhere, Charlie Caruso wanted the inside scoop, surprised Shane in order to gain that scoop, and was making a fair bit of noise. So Shane was pretty worried here. Like, why are you trying to interview me? A man just ran by with a chair in his hand. He's going to take my head off. So he runs out of the arena, gets jumped by The Miz, punches him a few times, then manages to climb on top of the back of the limo, and then it drives off. And then here's where things took a sudden turn towards the juvenile. The Revival were ready for their match with Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson. It never transpired. The Usos suddenly appeared and they showed footage of some scientific blend and proprietary blend called Usi Hot that apparently causes your body parts to burn when they sweat. The Revival then proceeded to rub their crotches and throw water on their private parts. If you're questioning why the Revival were so reluctant to re-sign with the WWE and would prefer to take their chances elsewhere, look no further than this Usi Hot mess of Monday Night Raw. And to my complete delight, Lars Sullivan demolished No Way Jose and his entire conga line. WWE has done an effective job of featuring Lars as a believable monster, although it may not be worth getting attached to him. He's not exactly a likable human being based on what was shared on Reddit. So we'll get to that in the industry news and rumors portion of the program. If true, his career might be drastically cut short, and deservingly so. And as fully expected, Kofi Kingston versus Daniel Bryan was simply an incredible main event. Kingston pinned Daniel Bryan following Trouble in Paradise. Two SmackDown superstars showed up the entire Raw roster. I know many others shared the same sentiment as me, but I felt as though the show was very disjointed and I had a lot of trouble enjoying it. It's just getting more difficult to tune into Raw on a weekly basis. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. Instead, WWE brings back AJ Styles to SmackDown Live, the house he built just mere weeks after he abandoned the house and moved over to Raw. Well, of course, it wasn't his choice. With more time away, his reappearance would have been much more impactful. Nevertheless, he kicked off the show. Sami Zayn quickly interrupted AJ to point out his toxic ego. Then Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods came out. The WWE champion had enough of hearing about AJ's architectural contributions to SmackDown since he doesn't live here anymore. After AJ and Kofi traded some back and forth jabs, such as, what are you going to do about it? Sami Zayn criticized Kofi for pandering to the fans, and he feels as though he's giving away title shots like Halloween candy. Being a fighting champion who isn't afraid to defend his championship, Kofi was willing to fight either man. This led to a triple threat main event with the WWE Championship on the line. Since it was Kevin Owens' birthday, he was celebrating at home. So he simply notified the WWE Universe via a cell phone promo that he took the day off. Ice cream cake? I sure hope so. There's no other way to live after all. The Money in the Bank ladder match participants squared off Ali and Andrade, but it was cut dramatically short after Randy Orton attacked both men. Ali did not back down from Orton, but ate a pop-up RKO for his bravery. Andrade's springboard attack was also countered into the RKO. The Viper struck again. Since the Hardys were forced to relinquish their titles, Shane McMahon crowned Daniel Bryan and Rowan the new SmackDown Tag Team Champions. Cue the Usos. They claim that since their cousin Roman can show up wherever he pleases, they are borrowing a page from his playbook. So they're back on SmackDown. They proceeded to call Daniel Bryan and Rowan Patrick and SpongeBob, Beavis and Butthead, etc., etc. The Usos went from one of the hottest acts in the company to trading juvenile insults and pulling bizarre pranks, although they were utilized far better on SmackDown than they were on Raw. Either way, this set up the Usos versus Daniel Bryan and Rowan. Coming back from the break, Finn Balor cut a bit of an odd promo from Ireland that felt more like a wish you were here, but, you're not. Despite many super kicks, the Usos simply couldn't put Rowan away. Great back and forth action that saw Rowan hit the Iron Claw to officially claim the titles for himself and Daniel Bryan. Could we see Hemp Tag Team titles? I sure hope so. While Shane McMahon was in the ring warning everyone of the danger related to the Money in the Bank ladder match, The Miz jumped him and followed Shane up the ramp until the B team got involved and came to Shane's defense. The former Miz Taraj showed no remorse. Carmella and Ember Moon versus Sonya Deville and Mandy Rose was surprisingly brief, with Rose pinning Moon after the double underhook facebuster. During the celebration, Paige, Kairi Sane, and Asuka crashed it on stage to announce the next week both teams would face off. Paige wants to show up her former proteges. That scene between Matt Hardy, R-Truth, and Lars Sullivan felt like a campy 60s Batman episode. Matt Hardy claiming, "It's him!" Then a delayed response followed by fighting. Lars Sullivan basically disposed of them both. AJ Styles versus Sami Zayn versus Kofi Kingston for the WWE Championship was an exciting match that allowed each competitor with a chance to shine. Kevin Owens came down and attacked Xavier Woods, but Sami could not take advantage. After being hit by 3 blue thunder bombs, Kingston managed to dig deep and pull out a desperate Trouble in Paradise to retain his championship. Kofi Kingston has excelled as the babyface world champion who continually steps up to the challenge and always overcomes the odds. His stock also continues to rise after 2 spectacular back-to-back main event performances this week. SmackDown, the far better show as opposed to Raw.
The latest industry news and rumors.
WWE announced that Bridgeport, Connecticut's Webster Bank Arena will host the 25th NXT TakeOver special that is set to take place on Saturday, June 1st. Tickets are set to go on sale tomorrow morning. All Elite Wrestling announced that the over-the-budget Battle Royal will be officially called Casino Royale and also contain some new rules. The match will start with 5 entrants, and then an additional 5 wrestlers will enter every 3 minutes going forward, and the 21st entrant will be the final person in the Battle Royal. In a recent interview with Chris Van Vliet, Rhino revealed that he turned down a very generous offer, and that his last date with WWE is on July 17th. MLW announced the signing of Ross and Marshall Von Erich. They are the sons of Kevin Von Erich, who is the only remaining brother of the famous Von Erich family. They will debut at the June 1st event in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. A recent Reddit thread that featured a compilation of posts from Lars Sullivan prior to signing with WWE has surfaced, and it's not good. His comments were highly bigoted, homophobic, and generally just extremely narrow-minded. If these prove to be from him, he deserves to be held fully accountable. And it shouldn't bode well for his employment status with WWE. Start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. When it comes to the Money in the Bank ladder match, you need to be resourceful and resilient in order to win. Up next, I'm joined by editor-in-chief of thegorillaposition.com, Ryan Boman, as we talk about the best of Money in the Bank.
Our topic of the week.
The concept is simple. You climb the ladder, successfully pull down the briefcase which contains a contract. This earns you a WWE Championship shot opportunity anytime, anywhere. I am joined by Ryan Boman, editor-in-chief of thegorillaposition.com and also contributor to fansided.com. We are going to relive the best and, of course, the worst of Money in the Bank, covering the actual ladder match itself along with the pay-per-view. That's a bit of a surprise for you, actually, too.
I always like, I'm one of those guys that can call it on the fly. We don't have to go through all the moves before we go through the curtain.
Exactly. We're two ring veterans. We'll call it on the fly in the ring, and we'll send the fans home happy, right?
Absolutely. And hopefully the fans go home happy from this pay-per-view, because I sense the natives are restless lately based on the ratings as we head into Monday night.
And that's a whole other topic. They are reaching. They are desperate. But in those desperate times, quite often we will see some great events transpire. Hopefully that will take place in just a matter of weeks. Some Money in the Bank facts, Ryan. So the match debuted. It was 2005, WrestleMania 21. It was invented by Chris Jericho and won by Edge. He successfully cashed in on John Cena. Here's a name you haven't heard in a while. Mr. Kennedy is the only Money in the Bank match winner to lose his contract to another superstar. That was not good. John Cena was the first Money in the Bank winner to actually cash in the contract and failed to win. And then Kane was the first to cash in on the same night.
It's been an intriguing story, this match, and now this pay-per-view, and with it expanding to the women's division as well. One of the things, I hated it when it first started. I really hated the idea, because I didn't like the idea of a title changing hands twice in one night, which is what the product has been of the Money in the Bank. But now it's grown on me. It's become a tradition, and I kind of love the drama of that person who's out there in the darkness lurking around.
You never know when, right? Yeah.
Yes, you never know when they'll strike.
So almost a little reminiscent of the hardcore title. Remember, 24/7, anytime, anywhere. Although that was a little dramatic. You could be on an elevator, 1, 2, 3, new hardcore champion. This a little bit more structured, at least for now.
Yeah, at least they're keeping it in the arena. As you said, for now. You never know when they might change that up.
Desperate times, Ryan. So I wanted to relive some of the best moments. This is according to us. We're not going to just throw out every single moment, but I do have some that stand out to me before we get to some of our picks for the best Money in the Bank ladder match, the worst, the best cash-in, the worst, and also the best regular match that was the non-ladder match, which that's going to be an easy shoe-in, I'm sure, for both of us. But let's start with some of the best moments. For me, I have to kick off WrestleMania 21, the MVP in many cases, Shelton Benjamin, running across that ladder, hitting the clothesline. Chris Jericho was the victim. A picturesque moment there, and he had many more to come in that particular match.
Yeah, I have to say, they always say the original is always the best. I think that match really kind of set the tone, and obviously Edge, as the first Money in the Bank winner, kind of set the tone for what would come from then on, and what we've now going on 10 years, which is so hard for me to believe.
I know.
That was, the event itself is almost 10 years old, and this stretches all the way back to the last decade. So, I mean, I think that one set the tone. Definitely the best in my mind.
Yeah, 2005 was when it debuted, so it's been quite some time. Jeff Hardy's leg drop onto Edge through the ladder, WrestleMania 23, one hell of a bump.
Absolutely. Again, you see where the Money in the Bank match, it's kind of it's sort of a long-lost cousin of the TLC match.
It is.
In terms of the innovation, the ways that the guys have worked that gimmick and that whole struggle for the case into just some incredible moves. And you just named some of the guys right there, Edge and Jeff Hardy, who helped revolutionize the TLC match. So why wouldn't they be guys who also revolutionized Money in the Bank?
Naturally so. How about John Morrison, your good buddy, Johnny Impact, his moonsault with the ladder? WrestleMania 24, what an insane moment that was.
Absolutely, and shades then of the greatness that this guy now still all these years later, he's still doing those types of moves. But yeah, that was in the early days, those formative years for him, where we really got that glimpse of what kind of superstar he was going to be.
Same event, Carlito and Mr. Kennedy, they tip over the ladder. sending Shelton Benjamin through another one that was WrestleMania 24 as well.
And those three guys, at that time, I think we were all thinking, these guys are going to be the cornerstone of this company for a decade to come. And it never really panned out that way, did it?
No, they all left. Shelton Benjamin, of course, came back. The other two, not so much.
Yeah, neither guy really they didn't really fit into that whole WWE vibe.
CM Punk wins Money in the Bank back-to-back, WrestleMania 24 and WrestleMania 25. Two successful cash-ins, by the way.
Now, you are the trivia man when it comes to this. How many guys have cashed in Money in the Bank more than once successfully?
Ooh, I think it was just him. I'm pretty damn sure it was just CM Punk.
I'm thinking
Actually, no, I am incorrect. Edge would have done it the first time, and then if you recall, Edge actually won it from Mr. Kennedy. Right. That's right.
Yeah, so but again, you're talking as far as the Punk wins, back-to-back wins, that was at the time when, let's face it, Punk was just at his top spot, the best we've ever seen him.
Do you remember when he won the first time? There's this look of surprise in his face, but he said the second time was totally different. And I believe it's because he got that first run out of the way, because that's the most intimidating one. There's a lot of trepidation there. Can I actually hold it? Can I be successful? But the second time around, he felt somewhat slighted from that first reign. He said, no, I'm going to make this very special. And that he did.
And not go too far back in time, but Ric Flair said the same thing about his first NWA World title reign. He wasn't ready the first time. And, of course, the second time around when he won at Starrcade from Harley Race, that's when we saw real greatness. And I think you bring up a good point. Punk's second go-around was way better than the first. Unless
you're somebody like Don Morocco, who can just have a historic reign the first time around, and then that's really about it.
Yeah. I mean, I think in terms of Punk and Flair, when you're talking about that world title level, and we've seen that with a lot of guys where that first run is kind of short, and then they come back and go on that long run the second time around for whatever reason.
I think it's just nerves. Can you handle the ball, right? It's a lot of pressure on you. Think of all the media obligations, too. A lot of distractions.
Yeah, and I think we've seen, like with AJ Styles, for example, in WWE, have those long runs, where they kind of settled in and decided, okay, you can do it. You're the guy that can carry the banner, and he obviously pulled it off very well. But we've seen it more times than not where that first title reign seems to be pretty short. It's kind of a getting your feet wet type of thing.
Speaking of an individual who grabbed the brass ring, I never thought it would happen. Daniel Bryan overcoming the odds and winning the SmackDown Money in the Bank contract back in 2011.
I mean, has there ever been a guy and I'm even putting Austin and The Rock in there that was so beloved by the fans? I mean, Rock and Austin, they were admired, they were respected, the fans cheered them. But I don't know if there's ever been a wrestler, particularly at this point in time, that was actually, and I mean genuinely, loved by the fans.
Yeah, I think if I had to put it into these terms, Austin was the biggest rock star you could ever imagine. Daniel Bryan, in your case, just beloved and just the ultimate underdog.
Yeah, and it's odd as I watched the Von Erich special on Viceland recently, man. Just the love and just pure emotion the fans had for them. In some ways, it'll never be that way again, but in some ways, in the modern era, you can view that run by Daniel Bryan in the same way. The people just loved him. They were so with him.
Yeah, I think in the same vein as the Von Erichs, which I do cover on this edition of the program, he's like family, right? He's like your brother, your son, your friend, but he's like family, and it's just such a natural, organic connection to this guy.
Yeah, I mean, that guy that seems like you could go out and he could be your neighbor mowing the lawn next door. And that's why people got behind him. He was the everyman.
In my humble opinion, the greatest Money in the Bank moment in history was the 5-star match between John Cena and CM Punk in the straight edge superstar's hometown of Chicago. The atmosphere is simply electric, Ryan, at Allstate Arena, and no one knew what was going to happen because it was announced that CM Punk did not re-sign his contract. They worked us, of course. So Vince did not want him leaving with the title, but as we know, CM Punk won. He exited through the crowd, even took a picture of it in his fridge, disappeared for several weeks prior to returning. This was the beginning of the summer of Punk, and what an era that was.
Yeah, this one almost made my pick for my favorite Money in the Bank match ever. But I at that moment, again, you're talking about the momentum. It just seems like that was so long ago when somebody could be that hot in wrestling. We haven't seen people have these kind of runs in a couple years now, and that's when they talk about building stars. I mean, could you have possibly built a star better than they did with that run that Punk had at that time, and the compelling storyline of who's the real champion? WWE really they were putting in extra time on that one, and it showed. That's the type of era I think the fans would love to see come back.
Yeah, and a hell of a soldier in CM Punk, a man who could get behind the microphone and cut just a hellacious promo, but also he could cut a great pace in the ring too. So he was, in a lot of respects, just such a complete performer.
Yeah, I think, and that's the one thing that I've always said. I've never thought at any time he was the best in-ring performer, no matter how it was hyped up. But he was good at everything. He's at least a B+ in every category. He's maybe not strength. He may not be the strongest guy, but in all the it factors, he is a B+ or better. Mm-hmm. He has that thing. And at that time, he was the hot hand. I mean, my God, there's a generation of kids now that are in their mid-20s that are just crying for him to come back. He was there, Steve Austin.
Yeah, very much so. Another CM Punk moment, this time on the losing end of the spectrum. Paul Heyman turning on CM Punk and costing him his third Money in the Bank briefcase. Eventually that led to CM Punk versus Brock Lesnar. SummerSlam.
Yeah, and how much time has changed since then, and we've seen, obviously, Heyman and Lesnar have had that long-time connection off and on, but my gosh, can you even think now? And I go back to the days when Heyman was managing the original Midnight Express and the Samoan SWAT team.
Oh, yeah.
But now when you think of Paul Heyman, the first thing you think of is Brock Lesnar. So look at how far we've come from that moment.
That's true. And what I love about this dynamic was that Paul Heyman was really the advocate, the spokesperson for Brock Lesnar. But here, he basically said, I'm just kind of the cheerleader. CM Punk can talk. I don't need to talk for him. He's one of the best ever on the microphone. I'm just there as the cheerleader and just to confirm that he is the guy.
Yeah, I never really... CM Punk was always a guy I never felt like needed anybody next to him. He seemed like the loner type, So Heyman with Lesnar was always a better fit. And again, we've seen that over the years cultivate into one of the great wrestler/manager relationships maybe ever.
From that same match, it was Mr. Monday Night's Rob Van Dam landing a beautiful 5-star frog splash onto Christian. Sold it really well. That was the Raw Money in the Bank match 2013.
Yeah, going back to those days when you had the two different brands and the two different Money in the Bank matches, RVD is another one of those compelling stories about WWE, and especially around this time frame when you're thinking, he's going to take that next step. He's going to be that guy, that big superstar for this company. And it's another guy that you look back in time. I think when we look at these old matches and these old shows, Chris, you always have that hindsight, that value of having hindsight, and you look back and go, wow, I can't believe I thought this back then. And going back to what we said about Mr. Kennedy and Carlito, even RVD, those are guys that at that point in time you thought, okay, they're about to take this next step, and it never happened when you go back and look in history.
Although RVD at one point he did, years prior, when he defeated John Cena, cashing in at One Night Stand 2. What do we call that? 2-night stand at this point? I believe that was 2006.
I call it one of the most amazing nights I've ever seen in my life.
Both of them were great. I mean, the first one especially just because of that nostalgia kick. But that second one, the fans popping as RVD defeats John Cena. Remember John Cena tossing that shirt into the crowd? They kept tossing it back. What a moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And but as I was saying here, this second run with RVD, I kept waiting for, the Flame to go back on, and he was going to, get that second chance, I guess, to be And maybe I was a fool for thinking that at the time, but I really thought at one point he would get one more shot to climb the mountain again.
Makes sense. I have a couple more, and then we'll get to our best and worst of here. With a little assistance from Kane, Seth Rollins won Money in the Bank over his former Shield brother, Dean Ambrose. Eventually, he cashed in, as we know, at WrestleMania 31 in 2015.
And many will call that the greatest cash-in ever. I going back to the Money in the Bank match, how much history just surrounding the cash-ins and the ladder is there between Ambrose and Rollins at this point?
A lot.
I mean, they themselves, in a short amount of time, have really tied a lot of their history to this event.
Funny you say that. Before I get to that point, how about Randy Orton hitting the RKO to Neville off the ladder, Money in the Bank 2015? That was also a very spectacular visual.
Yes, a spectacular visual. And Randy Orton, when he started doing the move, I was upset because I'm a Diamond Dallas Page fan. And I thought,
bang,
God, he's ripping off the diamond cutter. But even I have to admit,
even
he's
better.
Found some more innovative ways to deliver that same move. And it's not technically the same move.
No.
They do deliver it differently. And Page gave him the thumbs up to use it. So, hey, I've loved watching how they've evolved it over the years. That particular one, obviously the one with Evan Bourne coming out of the shooting star press on SmackDown years ago. He's mastered that. He's made that just the out of nowhere thing. It's something he's going to always be remembered for.
It is synonymous with Randy Orton. You think Randy Orton, you think RKO. 2016, Dean Ambrose wins, and later on in the evening, he cashes in on Seth Rollins to become the new WWE World Champion. Seth Rollins with a hard-fought victory over Roman Reigns. Spoiled.
Yeah, and it comes full circle. The three Shield brothers, all to finish off the night after that long, drawn-out storyline. Obviously, the Seth Rollins heel turn. You know what they say, one hand washes the other, and Dean Ambrose came back to get a little payback, a little justice for the past.
You noted before we jumped on, you had a story for Money in the Bank 2017 you wanted to share, and I have no idea even what you're going to say. We call it on the fly.
Oh, well, that actually, I'm from the St. Louis area, and the little lady and I were going up to St. Louis that weekend, and the plan was, well, we're going to grab a hotel room. I had an opportunity to go be a guest at the show, through somebody that I knew locally, and that was the plan. We're going to go and we're going to go hang out at the show and blah, 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 blah. And then the closer it got to the day, we just thought, you know what, we just kind of want to hang around the hotel and order food, and we'll pass. I actually passed on going to a pay-per-view for free, and I'm happy I did.
How dare you?
Because honestly, I sat in the hotel and we watched it. We ordered pizza. We watched it. That, in my mind, might be the worst Money in the Bank card. And I was literally 15 minutes from the building and didn't end up attending. And I'm happy I stayed in the hotel room and ate cheap pizza that night and watched it on my laptop.
Well, there you go. So I'm sure that's going to come up momentarily. But how about the best Money in the Bank ladder match? I can only guess that we share the same pick here.
Yeah, I'm sticking with Edge in the original.
Yeah,
I
same.
think. Yeah, I just think, as I said, I think it set the standard for what we were going to see over the next, 15 years now, I guess, or close to that, 14, 15 since that match happened. And then, of course, with the event itself, I think the way that everything worked out in the beginning is why we probably have a Money in the Bank, ladder match and a Money in the Bank event today. Had it not worked out and not been successful, the right people not being in place and pulling it off, maybe it's something they throw in the trash bin.
Definitely. I'll make 2 points. First, let's admit 6 is the magic number in terms of the participants, although they've gone upwards of, I believe, 8 to 10, which is just far too many, very convoluted. My runner-up was WrestleMania 24. That was CM Punk, Mr. Kennedy, Jericho, Benjamin, Carlito, John Morrison, and MVP. Really enjoyed that one, too.
Yeah, that one was strong, and I agree with you on the number. You can't have 8 to 10 people in a ladder match. No, it's just way too complicated. And at the same time, 3 seems like not enough. So, you'd think 4 to 6, especially for a match like
good
this.
Enough,
I
right?
think that makes sense. Yeah.
I think we're going to share the same pick here. Worst Money in the Bank ladder match.
Well, mine goes to the St. Louis event in 2017. And I'm taking the Carmella win with Ellsworth involved, because anything involving Ellsworth is awful.
So that's my top choice as well, too. The clunky conclusion really hurt the outcome. The rematch on SmackDown wasn't really that much better, although a slight improvement. My runner-up was Money in the Bank SmackDown 2010. It was Kane versus Christian, Matt Hardy, Cody Rhodes, Kofi Kingston, Drew McIntyre. Big show. You would think on paper, not bad, just very poor chemistry.
Yeah, sloppy. These matches, let's be honest, they have a better chance of being sloppy than they have of being beautiful, just because of the setup.
That's true.
The ladder has a personality all of its own, and it's going to do what it wants to do. Gravity can kind of be a terror to deal with in these matches. At the same time, if you don't have the right chemistry with that many bodies, if everybody's not on the same page in a gimmick match, you're screwed.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I remember Edge when they had the Elimination Chamber for the women's tag team titles, and he said, I do not envy them trying to put that match together. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I would think the ladder match would be, again, even more convoluted because the ladder is not cooperating.
Yeah, that's true. That's an object you can't control.
Right, and the guy, any bounce, any bump, anything can knock it over and cost a spot, But these guys, to their credit, and I give it right down the same thing down to the Royal Rumble matches with all those bodies in the ring. To these guys' credit, they've come up with really smart spots that look great, and it's one of the reasons, again, the ladder match, the Money in the Bank match is still around today. It's exciting.
Best cash in. Many, many choices here. The best cash in.
Boy, there's a lot of people that would say Seth. There's a lot of people that would say Edge. But my personal favorite, and I think the one I popped the most for, was Dean Ambrose.
Really? Same night?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, I loved it because I was so into Ambrose at the time, really hoping he was going to get to take that psychopathic run at the top, And so to see him get the belt, I popped the most for that one, I think.
I'll throw a 2 for you. So my first, and not a surprise here, Seth Rollins, WrestleMania 31, one of my all-time favorite WrestleMania events. I just absolutely am in love with that entire card, and most importantly, the execution. Such a surprise there, too. It was a great match, by the way, between Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns up until that point. Yeah. Seth Rollins comes down, changes the dynamic, wins. Nobody saw it coming.
Yeah, an amazing finish to that show. I got to change my vote, actually, though. I said Dean Ambrose in 2016. I'm going to change my vote to John Moxon.
Or John Moxley, yeah. So
John Moxley, I'm sorry.
So my runner-up, and this is one that many probably either tend to overlook or would put in the top place, Dolph Ziggler. The night after WrestleMania 28, Alberto Del Rio, when Dolph's entrance music hit, I'm here to show the world. One of the loudest ovations, one of the loudest pops, they call it in the biz, I've heard since the Attitude Era. It was massive.
Yeah, anytime, that's the one thing that I think is why this has grown on me, the event and the match itself, and the briefcase is more of the dynamic of the briefcase is something that it's amazing because while they're out there and they're quote unquote live, you could be at any event and boom, somebody's music goes off. Literally at a Raw or a SmackDown televised show, at a pay-per-view, that I think adds a lot to a live crowd, that at any point you could have a title match.
Anything can happen. Worst cash-in your opinion?
I was a fan of this guy when I first saw him, and this cash-in is indicative of his entire career. Baron Corbin.
Yep, my choice as well too. Yeah,
he cashed in unsuccessful. It was like a fart in church. Literally, it fizzled out that fast. And then he went bald and became a metrosexual, and that's basically the end of it.
Yeah, he unsuccessfully cashed in after interrupting a match between John Cena and WWE champion Jinder Mahal. Don't hinder the gender. My runner-up has to be Damian Sandow. That was during the October 28th, 2013 edition of Monday Night Raw. Sir Money in the Bank. That's what he liked to be called. He attempted to take advantage of John Cena's injured arm. Didn't happen. He ended up getting pinned in a failed attempt to capture the World Heavyweight Championship.
Yeah, that was my 1 and 2. 1 and 1A, actually, I think. But I think the Baron Corbin thing stung for me the most because I really thought he had some potential. And as I look back, that Money in the Bank failed cash in. That was kind of where it started going down. I know he's featured a lot on TV, but he's just not. He's not that guy, that lone wolf guy that we saw in the beginning,
If we're going to include successful cash-ins as the worst, it has to go to Jack Swagger's on Chris Jericho. Highly underwhelming. It also led to one of the most forgettable reigns in recent memory, too.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, I like him now as Jake Hager, on doing the MMA thing.
Yeah, sure.
And the MLW. But at the time in WWE, I could not stand. I mean, I'm not talking about I couldn't stand him like he was getting heat. I mean, he was getting the go away heat for me. Just absolutely brought nothing to the table as far as I was concerned.
He was just never a main eventer. That's really what it came down to.
No, looked good in the Intercontinental title. That's the way I've always said guys like that. He looked really good on the second to last match.
I like where he's at right now as an MMA fighter, and believe me, he is legit. He's a great collegiate wrestler, great amateur fighter as well, too. I think that he has a lot to offer in the world of MMA. And his size, of course. I think he's legitimately 6'5".
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's all man. He's a
big boy.
Total athlete. And again, that's not any... I just think more the way they used him in WWE rubbed me the wrong way at the time. But I think he's totally reinvented himself now.
To wrap this up, I mentioned it earlier, the best regular non-ladder match in Money in the Bank history for the pay-per-view.
Well, I know I'm going with a lot of recent stuff, but AJ Styles defeats John Cena.
Wow.
That is my because for one, I'm kind of a AJ guy, 20 years now.
I am too.
For this guy, and to see him, we have some mutual friends as well, so it's kind of like a guy that I've always sort of rooted for. And then on top of it, they always said he couldn't make it in WWE. He's too little. He can't talk. Blah 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 blah. And he beat their guy, the Crown Prince, John Cena. I popped hard. That's my favorite. My mind, the best. And let's be honest, those guys had some great matches together.
They did.
So I'm gonna go with that one.
Cena called Edge, and I think vice versa, the old shoe because it fits so well. And I really feel that Cena and AJ shared that same sort of chemistry too.
Yeah, again, that's not taking anything away from Cena. His accomplishments are unquestioned.
Remarkable.
It's just the idea that the guy who was the Babe Ruth of WWE got beat by the minor league kid, and that I mean, that's the way I felt. And at the time that, hey, now AJ's really come full circle.
Best regular match for me, and noted it earlier, just due to the sheer significance of it, CM Punk versus John Cena, Money in the Bank 2011. I long for those days, Ryan.
Yeah, that wasn't really my favorite era of wrestling, but
neither mine.
The run of Punk was so compelling, and it had the fans. I didn't really even get it myself at the time. Maybe I'm an old fogey, but the young people loved CM Punk, and they got behind him, and that's what wrestling needs.
Yeah,
they need a champion that the young teenagers and 25-year-old kids will look at and go, "That guy's cool." And they loved CM Punk, and they thought he was cool. So that was probably the most significant run of any wrestler not named John Cena in the last 15 years.
So perhaps this year you will be watching, and not from a hotel nearby on a laptop. He's Ryan Boman. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you, sir. It's always a pleasure.
You're listening to The Signature Spot with Chris Toplack.
I don't claim to be Cool Hand Luke, but I'm normally pretty calm and collected. But the WWE Network has tested my patience for the past week. I completely had to miss WWE NXT because I continue to have technical issues with the network. I've reached out to support for whatever reason. They haven't been exactly very responsive. They can't even diagnose the issue. Now, it looks like I can officially tune in as of a couple minutes ago via my laptop or my cell phone, but I just can't tune in via Apple TV. So I'm going to catch up on WWE NXT momentarily and also catch up on the Dark Side of the Ring, Gino Hernandez. I cannot wait to watch that episode. I got into him much later on in life in my early 20s, but he could have been the $1 Million Man instead of Ted DiBiase, and it would have been totally believable. Hope you enjoyed this recent episode of The Signature Spot with Chris Toplack. If it is your first time tuning in, hope you'll continue to tune in on a weekly basis. And if you would be so kind, leave a 5-star review, leave any review, leave your feedback. I always like to hear from you. Tell your friends, family, and most importantly, fellow wrestling fans to tune in every single Thursday. And until next week, happy trails to you. Until we meet again.
This concludes another episode of The Signature Spot with Chris Toplack. For new episodes, subscribe on YouTube, Stitcher, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, or iTunes. And don't forget to follow The Signature Spot on Facebook for exclusive clips, polls, and opinions.